This is Stephanie Diaz De Leon.
This is Omar Waheed.
This is Nicholas Garton.
And this is Rob Chappell.
And it's 365 Amplified. We are excited to invite a new person to the Madison 365 Amplified family. Yes.
Not even a new person. He's returning. He's new to the podcast, of course. Nicholas Garton, an alum of our... you were an intern at one point, weren't you?
I came through the Madison 365 Academy.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right.
They did, yeah. And you weren't invited. They stopped it right before you did. You arrived.
Nick was a reporter for several years and went off to a different newsroom and has now come back to us, and you'll be hearing his voice every now and again.
So excited. And if Nick doesn't speak as much, it's because he's trying to get a sense of us, and also we're loud and obnoxious. So, he might not have that vibe with us.
Speak for yourself.
You're loud and obnoxious too. Yeah. yeah. The other one who might not be is Rodlin, and she's not here, and maybe Nick, but we'll
can
see.
Get him there.
Yeah, we'll get him comfortable enough to hang out.
So first thing I want to talk about, we're going to talk about a couple of news stories, and then we'll get into what everybody else is talking about. But first, there's some symphonic music happening in Milwaukee this weekend, right, Omar?
The Milwaukee Youth Symphony Orchestra is putting on their annual day-long celebration to highlight youth with its free Play Your Part concert this Saturday. It's 1,000 students from 200 schools across Southeast Wisconsin and Northern Illinois. There's a lot of performances. Each of them is about 45 minutes, and it goes from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it is all day.
That
it's completely free. There are 2 stages going on, and I'm personally excited about it because I was involved in orchestra as a child, and I am originally from Milwaukee, so I probably would have been involved with this. I played the violin at first, and I switched over to the cello because there were not that many cello players.
Look at that. We have a tie because I also played the cello for years and such. So
we could do dueling cellos.
We could do dueling cellos.
This Saturday, be there. It's a good time. You get to see the youth do orchestra.
Yeah.
It is part of a fundraiser. This goal this year is to raise $130,000 to continue funding programs and reach more people. So be there, go hear some music for free, and have a good time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing. Thanks for that. The other thing we want to mention is the story that Dave Dahmer has on 365 Madison365.org this morning. Just as the fall elections are getting over, the spring elections are about to get underway. And Carmela Glenn, who we've talked about, I don't think we've had her on the show, but we've talked with her about a lot of different things. She's running for Alder in the city of Madison in District 18, which is currently occupied by Alder Charles Mayadzi, who we've covered before. The reporting that we've done indicates that there are some pretty significant and credible allegations of domestic violence in his past, that he's kind of grappled with that, and but he seems at this point to be running for re-election in the spring. He has said that those allegations are nothing but a political attempt to affect next year's elections, I guess, but. Carmela is running to fill that seat, representing the North Side, and she's just announcing that today. So at some point in the future, we will get her on the podcast.
Yep, and that's great news. And like Rob said, we will follow up and hopefully get her on, and of course, offer an invitation to Charles as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Anybody running for that seat will get an invite to come on the show.
Let's move into. I feel like this is like a address, like I'm doing like a presidential address or something like that. Let's move ahead into election results and news.
Okay, we'll do the presidential first. Obviously, is the big one we're all talking about. So Donald Trump won all 7 battleground states. That's the thing. The whole race was supposed to be so close, but ended up not being that close, actually.
Just surprising over and over again. I was up till 2 checking the results.
Yeah.
Especially Wisconsin. I was like,
like we're laughing, but we're not laughing. Like we're like, oh wow, this was a choice, everybody. But of us, very Trump's team and himself can say like that's a very secure win. Like it's not like, hey, these things are up for debate, or these things are. I'm like, no.
And and he won the popular vote, which no Republican president has done since George W. Bush. So I don't know. Is this a repudiation of the Biden administration or Democrats or something? Or...
I mean, overall voter turnout was down from the last election.
Yep.
I think Kamala's the Democratic turnout is like 13% lower.
Uh-huh.
Trump's is only down, I think,
3%. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's lower numbers.
Absolutely.
Overall. So I don't think it's necessarily an overall shift because it's less people
voting
coming out. But, yeah.
But why did fewer people come out? Just especially on the Democratic side, is that part of the shift?
You had a campaign that ostracized a lot of its voter base, especially people of color and workers. So I mean, you tell me.
Which party was that?
The Democratic Party. They have one out and said that we don't need your votes when communities of color raise moral concerns about policies. Said we can do it without you, and clearly they couldn't. Workers, low wages, and rising costs in property, and then said, "Hey, we're going to give you $25,000 to pay down on a house." The prices of homes have increased far beyond where $25,000 is an amount that would actually significantly help you. Actually,
I don't even know that $25,000 could help you with a down payment. The idea that like $25,000. What does $25,000 mean anymore, and who does that apply to, and who does that help?
Overall, it's a good graces, but doesn't really make any tangible impact. The administration did long-term investments instead of ailing immediate issues people had. So,
and there was the whole thing that you mentioned cost of living being a real issue for folks, and the administration and the Democratic Party kept saying like, no, that's not true. Like, look at these indicators of this really good economy. The indicator of my economy is whatever I have in my pocket, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or whether or not I'm worried about living paycheck to paycheck, right? Like there are conversations that weren't being had and such and et cetera. I want to make sure that I don't blame the candidate because she had 100 days, right?
Oh, she had
the Democratic Party did not have or give space to or allow for a real opportunity for whoever a candidate was going to be to run, like whether it was going to be Biden or whether it was going to be Kamala. Like there was no space for them to actually run well. And absolutely there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we can get into like in 1,000 different ways. But the party itself just needs to do some work and some real actual work of just listening to folks and understanding what they need. Because here's the thing, absolutely, there are issues within my own community that I have to grapple with, that I have to recognize and do some rough, and realize. But things I already knew. Like when I woke up, I was like, yep, this feels like what was going to happen. Because nobody was listening. And some folks, like folks in my community, like voted against themselves. As much as there is still this need within our community sometimes, or a lot of times, that we want to align ourselves with whiteness, right? And so we think we can absolve ourselves from being the other by voting in these ways, and sometimes voting against our own interests. I hope folks recognize and realize, like, hey, this immigration policy that's going to be implemented, because it's going to be implemented, 25 million. There's not 25 million undocumented folks in the United States. It's about 11 million, according to Pew.
But that's the number they want to
so
deport.
Who is that? And that 25 million includes probably and they're not pretending. This isn't something they haven't shared, that any folks who are naturalized are in that number for them. That 25 million includes folks who have become naturalized in the last 10 years. That's who they're going to go after. They're going to remove that language of naturalized citizen and just remove that naturalized part to help kind of, move that along. And we think it, when we vote, sometimes we don't think when we vote against our interests, it's not against our interests because I'm not included in that. That's somebody else. It's going to happen to somebody else. It's going to happen to these people, not me. And it's going to happen to you. Like it's going to happen to folks who look like you and who have the same experience of you and came in this way as you. And so, there is a lot for us to reckon with. And also, I just want to make sure that pundits, especially pundits who are white, don't go through those numbers of folks of color who have certain marginalized identities as the reason why the Democrats lost. The Democrats lost because the Democratic Party lost. They just didn't do their work. And they need to continue to do that work. There are, like Omar mentioned, there were things that were just ignored that this party has known, has heard, but they thought like, oh, it's okay. We'll be fine. We don't need them. Like apparently you do. Because you're losing numbers in blue states. And that's going to catch up and harm local elections and local races if you're not careful. Like that's who's going to harm the most. And you're going to lose like party alignment and party allegiance if you're not careful. So
Whoa. It was the third party voters' fault.
that was the other thing. Like if you like seeing people and also just reading everybody's like, I don't know, it's interesting. By all means, anybody who is feeling this, I absolutely think that you should rest and think about, what you can do for yourself and such. And some of us have to think about it way deeper and way differently than you. But don't take up too much space in social media with this somewhat. I'm talking about white people. Don't take up too much space.
They already have.
They're all over my social media.
Seen it.
Yes, I have, and I
The one thing.
I'm so
all the minorities. It's their fault.
Yeah,
you voted third
like
party.
women and white men.
That's
You
the
do.
issue.
You voted against your interests too. I don't know what to tell you. You absolutely did, but you don't have to think about it because you're the last one to be impacted. It's going to be everybody else, and that's why you don't have to vote that way. But stop like sitting in your like podium and your pedestal and whatever else you're putting yourself in and like donate, because the people who are going to be most hurt are those who are most marginalized, as well as nonprofits who often serve them, right? And like think about ways that how you can support, whether that, and I'm not saying just give money, but volunteering, like looking at a coat drive and food drive and there are Thanksgiving drives and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like I absolutely have your feelings, and then put that energy into something to do some more work. I'm not going to disregard feelings. Feelings are validated too.
Let's recognize that whatever feelings I have, I'm a white, straight, cisgender man. I'm going to be fine.
Well, I don't know. The sometimes racial ambiguity might get you in trouble.
but then I hear his accent. They're like, never mind. He's white. He's from Wisconsin. He's one of us. Yeah.
It's time. I think it was some idea of like why white guys might have voted for Trump. Everything the Democrats point to as a problem with Trump specifically, this is a Trump specific thing. The Republican thing is that he's a felon and he's racist and he's screwed, and that's what they like.
But it's also say like, I don't know that they necessarily like everything like that is racist and stuff like that. Him, period. Like I do think they allow it because he's allowed to get away with it, and that's what they want. They want the ability and the power to do what he gets away with, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily saying that they're going to say it, but they would like the privilege to. They would like the idea that they could get away with that kind of stuff too, right? Like absolutely, I think that's the attraction of Trump. Trump says like blah 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 out of his mouth. And he, and he got away with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing is that when you say he's a convicted felon, and everybody they don't think of him as guilty. They think of him a certain section of white people, think of him as not as prosecuted but as persecuted. There's a section of white conservatives who love that.
It's because they are much better at creating their own narratives and putting them out in those right spaces. And Democrats don't do that.
They're very, very bad at that.
They do not do that. They have
Horrible.
not leaned into, it's the first time I actually saw some of the rhetoric change a little bit for Democrats. And that even was because of the Harris campaign on like TikTok. That's the only reason. But again, but they still haven't figured that out in any other space, in any other way. And you can't only just do it at election time. the way that Trump's folks does things is not only during the elections. They perpetuate this through every single day of the year. They do not rest, not even on Christmas. I think they double down on the holidays, right?
Because it's a war on Christmas.
Well, but they understand that, though. They understand since the 80s, 70s, that holding media, using media, the rise of radio talk shows, the way that they've infiltrated newspapers and news organizations, creating their own news stations and channels and radio stations and Spotify, like all these things perpetuate and are all over the airwaves and any kind of media, and it's all kinds of media. It is not just one media. They recognize we have to exist in all types of media that somebody might have access to, and Dems are like, we will do it this way, A to B to C.
Well, and also with a lot of their media, their ecosystem doesn't particularly rely on truth, which I'd be curious. There's been a lot of slicing and dicing about ethnic and ethnicities and genders and income levels, education levels, and how everybody voted. I would love to see right now voters by information source. Is it primarily journalism versus
how
people on
folks
social media
are getting
versus
information, and that's how they're like making their decisions and such.
And the other thing, as a journalist, the Trump era is difficult because first of all, we've been declared enemy of the people years ago, right? Which is fine, I guess. But also, it just feels like we're taking a step deeper into the post-truth era.
Well, and also like only paying certain types of statistics and how folks voted and et cetera, absolves certain folks in power from responsibility. Like it's that individual person or that individual demographic that voted this way or that way. I'm gonna say it again: white men, white women, y'all not voting for the rest of us, right? Like there's this different. We know that is there. And also these parties and these organizations that have this kind of power that haven't, like, they also are at fault too. And they have to take responsibility for that. And they have to do some work for that. And they have to, I don't know what that means. And here's the thing, I don't have an answer. I'm not looking to give them answers. You know why? Because they got to figure that stuff out. I think I almost said it. I behaved.
I almost had to believe Stephanie.
Yeah. Because folks are telling them. There are plenty of folks who have already shared with them why they're not participating or why they're not voting or why they're voting a different way. Like there is data there. Use the existing data if you want to do extra data work. Just use the existing when the other folks are doing for you, and do some work there.
One example that I thought of for when you talk about the information ecosystem outside election years, is the whole focus related to transgender people. It's not the reason for the election, but one example. 5, 6, 7 years ago, Republicans decided, for no good reason, we're going to go after trans people because other groups had made some progress. So we can't. It's not politically correct to go after them anymore. So trans people are the next people we're going to go after. We're going to do bathroom laws and whatever. And then Democrats pushed back on that in a way that's a little bit nuanced, right? Kind of like, no, actually, people deserve equal rights. And then the pushback to the pushback is they want men in women's sports. And, it's so dumb and an easy, glib slogan. So it's not that issue, but then that becomes one piece of this overall picture that they're just woke and out of step with me. And I don't want men in women's sports either, but without any actual thought put into it. I think that's part of the way this information ecosystem works, is that there's an attack and then a counterattack and then an attack. And then that's that counterattack to the counterattack is what we grab onto. This is really easy, simplistic rhetoric. It actually resonates with people who aren't thinking about it too deeply.
I mean, it's fear-mongering, and they don't realize the statistical probability is you probably will never meet someone trans in your life, especially if you are in these circles of right-wingedness, religiousness. What are you worried about?
It's
you're not going to
coming.
meet these people. You're never going to see these people because they don't want to be around you in the first place.
Yeah.
So,
They're going somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like they're very aware because for safety reasons where they are welcome to where they're not, right? And I just want to remind people, like, look, this is not a single problem with a single answer, right? Like, it is multifaceted. There are layers to this. And so when folks are saying, like, I had a lot of folks reach out to me or talk to me about how they were feeling and such like that. And I just, like, one, like, hope is a discipline. Like, I expected a certain result. I hoped it would be different, and I was wrong. But hope is work. Hope is something that we do every single day. It's a discipline. It's part of the work. And also, because this problem is not a single problem, there's not a single solution for things. Try to be a solution for one thing, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to solve the rest of the world, that you're going to solve that whole problem by yourself, but just, like, if you want to put your energy into something or to figure out what you should do next, with the 1,000 of problems that we have, find yourself to be a solution for one of the 1,000 of problems. That's how you move forward. That's how you move towards something like that. Sitting only in grief and in blame, though an important thing for you to process, absolutely, but then breathe and keep moving. Because if you have time to think about it, there is a privilege there, right? If you have space to have those feelings, there is a privilege there. Because there are a lot of folks who don't. They just have to keep going. And maybe they are very aware in the back of the mind that the impact of this is going to hurt them the most, but they have to keep moving to avoid that impact, or, avoid that impact. And they just don't have time to think about it or feel it. They just have to go because they have families they have to take care of. They have to take care of themselves. There are other things that are, for them that makes them have to keep going. And so, if we have the privilege to think and have feelings and consider it, we also then have the privilege to at least try to be a solution to one of the 1,000 of problems that this stems from. So let's move into local races.
Yeah. Across Wisconsin, more specifically, Senator Tammy Baldwin beat Eric Hovde by about 27,000 votes.
Did he concede yet?
I don't know. I would imagine he has. I don't know.
I'm not in that circle. Maybe not.
Are they talking recount?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I would imagine.
Actually, there's a pretty slim enough margin that there might actually be a recount.
Margin for a recount?
It's less than 1%.
All right.
But I'm reasonably confident that she actually did win in Wisconsin and she will retain a third term. Otherwise, it was in Wisconsin. Maybe the biggest thing in Wisconsin is the new legislative maps played out as expected, such that as of right now, the Republicans have a 35-seat majority. That's 1 seat short of a veto-proof majority. And coming in January, that majority will be down to 9. They still have the majority, but it'll be 54 to 45, which changes the dynamic considerably. Because now, for example, in Mount Horeb, we used to be in the district that included, we were on the western edge of the district that included Verona and Fitchburg, all Democrats. And now in the 51st district got moved to encompass Mount Horeb. So now we're in a district with Greene County, part of Grant County and Iowa County, Barneveld, Dodgeville, Minter Point, Monroe, which has been represented for the past 10 years by Republican Todd Novak. Todd Novak won that election, so he's going to retain that seat, but all of a sudden this district that he's representing is like 50% Democrat. So he actually has to worry about being reelected. He has to worry about what we think of him, and our, so that's going to change the way he approaches legislation. That's going to change the way that the Republican majority approaches the Democratic minority, knowing that it's feasible the next time around, 2 years from now, the Democrats could flip the assembly.
Yeah, because even though Wisconsin went one way, it was interesting to see how folks voted in local races, because that also includes like the school referendums and the city referendum, right?
Right, yeah. All the school referendums in Dane County passed. The Madison ones were like 73% in favor. So those were, I think, a little bit closer, but still passed. So clearly, individual voters in Dane County, at least, are okay with spending on education out of their own pocket, as the city one also passed. And Nick, I think you're probably more expert on that than we are.
Yeah, the city passed with about 57%, and that'll fund the city programs, city staffing for those. a lot of all of the nonprofits that serve Black and brown and vulnerable communities were on the chopping block in this referendum.
Mm-hmm.
Had it not passed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or the council would have had to basically overstep the mayor and take money from somewhere else to fund them.
Mm.
So that was a very important passage as well. So if that, I mean, with that, what that tells you is obviously people are okay spending money on government, right? On education, local government. And as Dr. Gothard kind of alluded to last week on the podcast, maybe we need the legislature to take that into account and provide shared revenue and actual direct state funding for education, so we don't have to keep asking every 2 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if anything really changes among the Republican legislator in Wisconsin, given the results of everything, because I see them emboldened in one direction, but also, like you mentioned, maybe aware that they're vulnerable in certain ways.
The 2026 elections will be interesting. It always, whoever's in the White House, the midterms tend to go the other way. So we'll see how hard it goes the other way, and whether that affects local state assemblies or not.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know yet.
Speaking of Congress, the congressional races went pretty much as expected, except in western Wisconsin, the 3rd district. Derek Van Orden won, but by less than expected. That race didn't even get called until 11 o'clock the next day.
All right. We're going to end today with a question that is Omar's, and we're going to let Omar ask the question.
Well, the question I wanted to ask was favorite album this year, but no one else is listening to music.
I am listening to music, but I also have not enough for me to say it's like what I've listened to is the best.
All right, so we're going with favorite album all time.
No.
What?
All time. How about all time right now?
Yeah, sure. All time right now.
All right.
It's always a fluctuating thing. The Black Album by Jay-Z. Masterpiece. That's the Reds. Come on. That's a great song.
It is a great song. I don't. All right, Rob.
Led Zeppelin 4.
I told you.
It's not actually called Led Zeppelin 4.
What is it called?
It's called Led Zeppelin.
Oh.
But it happens to be their 4th album. So everybody calls it Led Zeppelin 4.
I don't know who says everybody because I don't know.
They were mad that everybody said that Led Zeppelin 3 was not a proper follow-up to Led Zeppelin 2. So they said, okay, fine, we're just going to put out another album called Led Zeppelin again.
Wait, I'm a little confused. I'm not that confused to ask questions, so no, I'm okay.
I don't understand enough.
I'm okay. I don't need that.
But, I mean, Black Doll, Rock and Roll, Battle of Evermore, Stairway to Heaven, Misty Mountain Hop, When Levee Breaks, just great music.
I've heard of one of those songs, and you could probably guess which one.
But they were all like 22, 23, 24 years old when this came out. It was just astounding. Prodigious talents.
We're going to let Rob enjoy that for a second. Nick?
Well, I thought we were going with our pick for the greatest album of all time. And which for me would be Thriller, but my favorite album.
Oh.
I'm like Rob. I'm into rock music. So my favorite album is the self-entitled album, the 1975.
Oh, that is a great episode.
75.
That's a great album. I am torn because I'm thinking about it. My favorite album of all time, but I also change all the time depending on my mood, and so I am playing 2 albums a lot right now since Tuesday. Now I'm thinking about 3 because there is another one. Okay, so it's Kendrick Lamar. And I mean, I like all Kendrick Lamar's albums. I'm doing a kind of mixed playlist of him.
Pick one.
No. Lemonade by Beyonce, and then Fever to Tell from the AAS are what I'm really remembering as the best kind of music for me right now.
Right now? That's what you're listening to?
Yes! Right
What's
now.
your favorite?
Those are, they're all playing right now.
Next week, we're going to do a favorite album this year, so I expect everyone to do their research.
I don't
Start listening. It's like, oh, what album's
What is your favorite album?
so far this year?
Yeah.
Well, we have to wait till next week.
And with that note, we'll be back next week. We're gonna leave up a little teaser.
That's what you call a cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good weekend.